My name is Lori. Standing in the middle of the silent engagement party, I can still feel the tension in the air. My mother's face has turned a color I've never seen before, a mix of fear and panic. Daniel is holding the microphone, his calm voice cutting through the silence. Should I tell them why you really pulled her out? Just a moment ago, my mother was up on the stage, speaking into the microphone with that overconfident smile. She talked about how much she loved me, how proud she was, and what a wonderful man my fiancé, Ethan, was. People were smiling, and I was too, until she dropped the bomb. Of course, she dropped out of law school and couldn't keep her first marriage together either. But, here we are. The room went quiet in that dreadful way. I could hear the background noise, a fork clinking, a chair shifting, but all eyes were on me. It felt like a physical blow, like a bucket of ice-cold water had been dumped on me. I've had years of practice keeping my face still around my mother, so I didn't move a muscle. My father stood up, looking like he was going to smooth things over, as he always did. He reached out towards Ethan, probably to make a toast and distract everyone. But Ethan was quicker. He stepped forward, gently took the microphone from my mother's hand, and stared her right in the eye. The room became absolutely still. I watched my mother's expression change from amusement to uncertainty. Ethan's voice was calm and quiet, yet it carried across the room. And that's when my mother's glass slipped from her hand. It hit the carpet and rolled, leaving a dark stain on the cream-colored floor. Everyone was too stunned to move. How did we get here? Let me take you back. I come from a well-to-do family in the suburbs. My parents, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, are pillars of the community. My father is a successful businessman, and my mother is a socialite who loves to host parties and be in the spotlight. Ethan proposed to me 3 weeks ago on a beach at sunset. It was just the two of us, the sound of the waves crashing, and the warm sand beneath our feet. I said yes before he even finished his proposal. After years of struggling and rebuilding myself, I thought I was finally on solid ground. My parents insisted on booking a fancy ballroom for the engagement party. The room was decorated with gold-trimmed tablecloths, tall crystal vases filled with fresh flowers, and all our family and friends were dressed to the nines. My mother took charge of everything, from the guest list to the catering. At the time, I thought it was her way of showing love and excitement for me. How wrong I was. Ethan stood beside me at the entrance, greeting guests with a warm smile. His hand on my back was a comforting presence. He knew about my past, about the things that still made me flinch, but he never made me feel broken. That night, watching him chat with my uncle and shake hands with my father, I thought, this is the life I've fought for. The first hour of the party went smoothly. Dinner was served, the wine flowed, and the room was filled with the warmth of celebration. My younger sister, Lily, caught my eye from across the table and mouthed, "You look beautiful." For the first time in years, I really felt it. But then, my mother took the microphone. And that's when everything fell apart. When I was 22, I was accepted into one of the top law schools in the country. It was my dream since I was a teenager. My grandparents on my mother's side had set aside a fund of $250,000 specifically for my legal education. My parents were the custodians of that account, and I trusted them completely. By the time I started my second year, the money was gone. It wasn't spent on tuition, and it wasn't invested on my behalf. My mother had been quietly siphoning the funds for almost 3 years to support her extravagant lifestyle. She bought a luxury vacation home, had the main house renovated, and took expensive trips around the world. From the outside, it looked like success, but in reality, it was theft. When I found out, I confronted them privately. My mother started crying, saying she was in a difficult situation. My father apologized in that typical way, more sorry about being caught than the act itself. They begged me to keep it a secret, saying it would destroy the family. They promised to pay the money back. I was 23 and still craved their love, so I agreed. I had to leave law school because I had no funding and too much shame to explain the real reason to anyone. When people asked, my mother told them I couldn't handle the pressure. She said it so often that I think she started to believe it herself. 2 years later, my first marriage fell apart. I was carrying the weight of that secret alone, and I became a shell of myself. Nobody knew the real reason, and my mother would casually tell her version of the story at family gatherings, as if it was the only truth. But Ethan knew everything. 6 months into our relationship, I broke down in his apartment one night. I told him about the money, about what my parents had done, and about how it had ruined my life. He listened without judgment, holding me as I cried. Back at the party, as the glass was still rolling on the floor, my mother finally found her voice. "Ethan," she said, her tone a warning dressed as a greeting. She put on that tight, practiced smile she used to regain control of a situation. "This isn't the time or place for this." Ethan replied calmly, "You're right. It probably isn't, but you chose the time and place, not me." The whole room was frozen in that moment. I stood at the center, feeling something inside me shift. I had spent so long protecting my parents, carrying their guilt and shame. But standing there in my engagement dress, in a room they had decorated, at a party they had organized, I finally realized it wasn't loyalty, it was fear. And I was done being afraid. I walked forward and stood beside Ethan. My mother's eyes met mine, and for a brief moment, I saw something in them. It could have been regret, or just the panic of someone whose long-held secret was about to be exposed. I took a deep breath and spoke clearly enough for everyone in the room to hear. I told them about the money, about my dreams being shattered, and about how I had been silenced for so long. By the time I finished speaking, the room was completely silent. My aunt covered her mouth in shock, my cousin put down his fork, and my father stared at the tablecloth. I knew from his stillness that he wouldn't defend my mother this time. Maybe he was tired, too. My mother said nothing. There was nothing left to say. Ethan took my hand, holding it steadily. That simple gesture finally broke me, but not in grief. It was a relief, the kind that comes when you stop carrying a burden you were never meant to bear alone. An hour later, we left the party. The night air outside was cold and clean. Ethan bought us coffee from a late-night stand 2 blocks away, and we sat on a bench in silence for a long time. Eventually, he asked me how I felt. I told him I felt light. He said it made sense. I apologized for the way the party ended, but he said it ended exactly the way it needed to. I don't know what the future holds with my parents. There are still conversations to be had, decisions to be made about our relationship. Some doors don't close cleanly, but I know one thing. I'm not that 23-year-old girl anymore. I'm not small, quiet, and afraid to speak up. I have a man by my side who knows the worst of me and still chose to love me. I have my voice back, and that's more than enough to build a new life on. If this story moved you, hit subscribe right now. There are people out there who need to hear stories like this, and your subscription helps us reach them. Every week, we bring you real, raw, human moments that remind you you're not alone. Join this community. You belong here.